Hello and welcome back to another episode of the CAYACast. My name's Brad. I'm joined here with a familiar face of Gina, and joining us today on the CAYACast is Mr. Jonathan Bandli, the founder of Bad Weather Productions, which, if you know anything about the inside side of event production in South Africa, is the premier creative technology group in South Africa. I'm, as a self-confessed event gear production geek, unspeakably excited to have this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm really excited to dive into the chat. So before we get started, the first thing that I like to start the podcast with is find out, what do you think is the most important element of you that's missed out from an introduction whenever you're introduced on anything?
Firstly, I think co-founder definitely is the first thing to make sure that that's introduced correctly.
Cool.
My business partner, Andrew, is definitely the better half of the business.
Shout out Andrew
For keeping things going for 11 years. I think that's a pretty good intro. I've never really been introed on a podcast before, so quite
welcome.
flattering. Thank you.
It's a blessing to be the first. For those that don't have as much of an understanding, and to give people a really good context before we dive into this, can you explain what bad weather is and does in the South African events industry? Like a quick little 1 minute summary. As close as possible.
Cool. Well, like the elevator pitch is obviously we're a creative technology house specializing in live events and entertainment. But what that really means is, how do we bring ideas to life on the stage for brands and for festivals and for promoters and for pretty much anyone, artists included? How do we take these stories and bring them to life in an entertaining manner? And if that happens to cross over across any genre, be it a festival, a corporate show, we've even done music videos and whatever that means, how do we bridge that technology gap from a creative idea into a technical execution? That's kind of the birthplace of why the company exists, and we've kind of specialized in that niche as we've gone along. So I think if that's like the shortest elevator pitch I could possibly give, that's really where we fill, I think, our niche in that gap.
So would you say it's not just sort of setting up the production side, it's also executing on the creative vision
strategy?
It's like a 360 service
it will fluctuate depending on the show and our involvement in the production or the project. But yes, typically we'll be involved early on with the concept. Someone will come to us and say, hey, we want to do X. How do we turn this thing into life? And it's going to be in this medium, so it'll be either on stage or wherever it's going to be. So the technical parameters of that, then we'll conceptualize creatively how this is going to come together. So we'll listen to the story, be it music show, whatever else, entertainment. And then we'll put all that together in a production. So technical production will then obviously execute on the day as well and ensure that that whole thing comes to life practically. That's a big part of what we do. It's great to have creative ideas, but is it practical?
And as we all know in live events, the ideas and the practicality are very different.
So trying to marry those two is the real challenge, the real art there. But down to the execution as well on the day. So it varies, but essentially that's why we kind of have like the creative and the technology side. Usually means like creative technical production. So the creative side, the technical pre-production, and then the execution. And typically the execution is kind of the easiest part. By no means is any of it easy. But it's the final stage, the thing that everyone sees. But the pre-production is really where the magic happens. And where the ideas get fleshed out into something real. And then it creates, the more pre-production you do, the more space you create on the day for great new ideas, rather than trying to just get through the base of the project, if that makes sense.
For sure.
So that's how we kind of see that. And obviously it's super critical if you're spending time and money on a stage or in a venue. This costs a lot of money to be there. So the more pre-production you can do, the better understanding of what everyone's getting, right?
Because people don't understand, I think, like, there's like, I'm just going to get all the gear and like it'll come together and be a good festival or a good show. And it's like,
yeah, times have changed, eh? You can't just do that anymore. Like, everyone will just share a drum kit.
Yeah.
Like that's not happening. Like everyone wants their own thing. And rightly so. So we need to accommodate that. And that's a large challenge when it comes to, like, if we're talking music events specifically, talking to the artists, how they want things done, what do they need, How can we support them?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then managing the cost side with the clients.
Yeah.
Why can't they all share a drum kit?
Yeah.
That's a little
Try
more
to
complicated
explain the
than that.
nuance to that. Yeah.
So you're just trying to be the good go-between, right? Like honoring everyone's vision
Yes.
and giving everyone the best opportunity to succeed in that event is kind of the mediator sometimes.
I think easier said than done. A bit of a juggling act, making everyone happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely controversial at times.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I was
necessary.
just chatting we like doing some training at the cafe with our like event guy and upskilling on various things, and just trying to explain that, like, you know, you have to have this supreme quiet confidence in like what you do and your ability to execute, because that's what you've been brought on to do. And then the reality is the rest is people management, and just like, what's your input? What are you know, like, these people have differing and conflicting priorities. How does one manage that, and the ego and the personalities and all of that? People don't realize that it's not the technical side that's the complex bit. That's
Sometimes it's also
it can be, but like technology operates according to rules.
Yeah, everyone I think understands the rules of technology, and things do go wrong.
Yeah.
But communicating up front and planning for that, I think it's never how things go wrong, it's how we recover from them, and if they've been communicated. So if a client doesn't want to invest into a backup video server, then are you comfortable going into the show without a backup?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Just
have
do
we
you
done our due
understand the
diligence?
risk? Yeah.
Do you want to run without a generator?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if we get load shedding,
That's on you.
that's on you, and that's absolutely fine. Just communicating those risks up front, and everyone's on the same page. I think people get upset when those risks aren't communicated.
Yeah, and it's a surprise.
It is a surprise, and then everyone feels a bit shortchanged.
Yeah.
So
100%. So Bad Weather does now cover so many elements of everything eventing. Where did it all start 11 years ago? What was the impetus, and where did you guys start, and what was kind of the growth journey from there?
pretty simply and pretty humbly, I think. When I say we, Andrew and myself, were working at local rental companies here in Cape Town. We studied together. We did sound engineering, and we were in a university together, or college, whatever. And we met there, and then after school we were both working at some rental companies. He was doing video and I was doing lighting, so not audio at all after that. After I had passed through a few studios and done a few things, and I never really got drawn for the sound team. I kind of got thrown as the last resort into the lighting team, and I realized, like, this is so cool. And so I kind of established myself as a lighting designer, and him was doing a lot of Andrew was doing a lot of video work, and then we were slowly realizing that we were just getting a gear list every day and getting sent to a random event with no context of the show. And no matter who you asked, there was no plan. There was no drawing of what the stage would look like. Like, what is the purpose of putting the light here versus there? Why is this video screen like this versus that? Everything felt quite generic and like packaged. And it became super frustrating for us, going like, well, we're just doing this thing day on day, but there's no real purpose. It doesn't feel like we're making an impact. Yeah. And I soon realized that there was this massive gap between people's great creative visions that were coming down from agencies or brands or just individuals as a whole. And there was this massive disconnect towards the technical people who were fantastic at what they do, but so technically minded. Yeah. So, no, we have to fit it in the box like this. We were going, how do we bridge this gap between the creative world and the technical world? And how we have such a passion for bringing those things to life using technology, and happen to be, quite good at technology and quite passionate about creative. So we kind of started this idea, like, let's make this business that bridges this gap and fits perfectly in the middle. The idea was always to grow the industry, not to add more competition into the space. Like, if we can help the client realize a better and bigger creative vision, we can essentially create a bigger budget for the technical team, because the client can see what they're getting and, want to spend more money and see better return on investment for a show. And this was our kind of vision at the beginning, met with a lot of trepidation up front, being a couple of young kids, like coming out of rental houses and then having to go ask the rental houses, like, hey, we have this show and would you want to come quote on it? And so, but over time, people realized kind of what we were doing. And I think a lot of businesses in South Africa overall have started to shift to realizing that the creative service is actually a key part of selling the technical production. And you'll see a lot of people having the word creative technology in their names now, and doing a lot of services that we started out doing as foreign.
Yeah.
Like planning and drawing out a show in 3D and doing proper paperwork is something that people don't think about. But there's tons and tons of paperwork that needs to go into a show to plan every single detail. That was never done. And if it was done, it was never charged for. So we came onto the scene like, hey, we want to charge for this. And everyone's like, what? That's crazy. But now it's a paid for service because, again, you can't go into a show without planning. So it's taken time to get there, and it's helped the industry grow overall, and we're just lucky to be a part of that. And it's great that we can actually charge for these things and have a successful business, or a still functioning business after this long. So yeah, that's kind of where we came from, and that growth over 11 years has just been like super steady, just trying to put in the work, doing good shows, not really thinking about the business side too much, as long as it's still paying the bills. For us, it's always been about like, the work will speak. Just do great shows, and the rest will follow. And that's kind of been the general ethos for us as Bad Weather.
I mean, it's so interesting hearing you talk about the beginning and the, you know, how the industry's grown. And I mean, us as now being the young whippersnappers, you know, like coming into the scene in a lot of ways, is having been able to see how, even in the last 5 years, how things have started to mature and how people are starting to think more about the strategy and the intent behind things. And when I first started my first company, my first little events company in 2019, my frustration was similar in the sense of like, everyone, it felt like people were creating events for the sake of having an event and putting people through the door as numbers, and they were a number, and you went and watched the event and then you left, and it was like this one thing that didn't have any heart or soul to it. And so what I did with that company was we were calling it experiences, because people in today's day and age require more than that. You know, it's more complicated. People are more nuanced. People's expectations are different. They understand things better. But it is really exciting that people are starting to see the value in the creative strategy work that goes into the execution, because that is really where the magic happens. Speaking of the journey, you've now subsequently worked on, and I mean, maybe it'll actually be funnier to get a list of different events to scroll down the screen. But I mean, among them, Rocking the Daisies, Leave the Baby Dumb, Cotton Fest, you worked with Boiler Room, you worked, I mean, all the, biggest brands in the country, you know them.
We try to get around,
you know, having been over that journey over the last pretty much decade, just over, what is the thing you're most excited about now? I think also post-COVID being a real part of the conversation in the major live events scene in South Africa.
Sure, that's a big question because it's nuanced but extremely broad at the same time. I think if we're talking music exclusively, the quality of music coming out of SA is next level at the moment. What excites me is seeing what's going to happen next with their production. I think it's literally, we were talking before, but I think the only differentiating factor between like South African artists and everyone else is the production. Because the audience, like you said, is a lot more nuanced now, and they demand a lot more. There is a level of a show that needs to be met. There's a contract between the artist and the audience. Like, it's great, we love your music, we're going to invest to come to the show, but we're paying for you to entertain us. There is, we're paying to see the music, but there is a level of entertainment. Even if that means a stripped down set, the attention to entertainment and the show needs to be honored. It's a contract between, I think, the artist and the audience that needs to be honored. And so how artists, South African artists specifically, express themselves, I think is going to be really interesting. We obviously, like all things, everyone looks overseas and starts with a basic copy. And I think we're in a unique situation now where I hope we can kind of skip over that a little bit, because everyone musically is doing something cool. But if we just start copying live shows overseas, I think it's going to start looking and diluting the coolness of what we're doing here, and the difference in how people perceive South African music overall. And the big question in the office that we've been discussing is like, if you look at EDM, for instance, overseas, like you see an EDM stage, you don't have to hear what it sounds like. You know that that's an EDM stage. you can see big hip hop festivals. They have a unique look and feel.
Yeah.
Like, what is that for South African music going forward? How do we contribute to redesigning and rethinking how that looks? So when someone looks at a show, what is a South African show? What does an Amapiano show look like? That it doesn't just look like Boiler Room or something else, who have their own identities. We're not copying. I'm not saying we shouldn't borrow and learn from other experiences, but how do we make it uniquely South African?
Yeah.
And I think that is an exciting journey that I'm really excited to see. And hopefully we can, play a small part in that. And we've always been passionate with working with artists. Our track record runs pretty deep. We always try work with some artists, be it big or small. For us, if we really love the music and we love the people, we'll self-invest into those shows always. I mean, we've been working with Mike from PHFAT for forever. All the artists we've still got great relationships with because we really value what they're doing. We believe in what they're doing, and we want to see how we can contribute towards that. And I think that if we can play a small little role in that, would be super exciting for Bad Weather. I think that would be the next big thing for me. Is how do we redefine the production space for South African artists to support them and tell their story in like the best way possible.
And on the world stage,
100%, which is happening now. And 100%. It's kind of like, okay, everyone's playing this genre in the world stage, like on the back end of some international look and feel. How do we add without like culturally appropriating it at the same time? Because everyone's like, the flip side, I don't know, we're going to talk about it later, but I want to talk about it now.
Cool.
Is it's great that these artists are going overseas and getting huge international exposure. But the fear that I worry about is not because, we should keep the work here and local, but going to work with some big international creative agency who knows nothing about the culture or the music is going to just kind of just
dilute you.
Yeah, and just stick a generic look and feel on you. That's a danger of potentially just going exclusively to an international production company. Like, you've made it overseas now. You're going to go sign on to some massive production company who's hot right now, and rightly so. They're doing amazing work. I mean, who wouldn't want to work with the best in the world? But how do you make sure that it's still grounded in the genre that you're actually performing in and honor that? And I think that's going to be an interesting conversation where like the borders get broken down between like, how do we migrate great South African creatives to go work with international production companies, and we see skills transfer to really get South African creatives to work at the highest level with the highest level of international music. That balance needs to kind of happen. So I just hope that doesn't become like a one-sided thing.
And I think, that's been, I think, a really common theme of a lot of the discussions we've had around Africa and, African and South African creativity is there is a lot of trepidation around, cool, there's all this interest, which is great and fully deserved, and we deserve, so much more in terms of, I think, the caliber of creative in this country. But how does it stay here? How does it continue to grow the industry here? How does it continue to not just like rely on exporting to an international market to bring it back? Because I think the other thing for me is like reframing the understanding of what best looks like. And I think a big problem that we have as South African creators in a lot of ways, and as South Africans in general, a lot of the time we don't like see ourselves as good as we are, and we're like sold this you sold the dream and the branding of the massive US agencies and the UK agencies who've got the infrastructure and the established industry and the reputation, and so they're considered the best. But it's my personal whatever on South African creativity is there is no other environment in the world like South Africa to create creatives like South African creatives. It just doesn't exist. So yes, we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the long-term established, well-capitalized industry that provides a really clear and well-understood path for growth for artists. That's what we need. But the quality, I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's unparalleled.
Yes.
I don't think...
No, I agree.
There's,
I think the limiting factors there is, like you say, infrastructure, but I think more than that, it's just time and planning, which of course leads into money. And we have a weird market here. Like we were talking about live event venues. Like how do artists make money? because without money they can't invest back into shows. So it's easy to look at international model and say, yeah, we're making this many 100,000 US per performance, so you can take a big team with you, and you can have a big creative team around you and a big technical team, and you can maintain production quality by saying no to shows because they don't meet your standards, etc. We don't have that luxury here. Hence, we talk about working with Mike from PH Fat. Like, we want to work with him to produce a show. Great. How many big festivals, big stages could we actually put the show on? When there was Opikopi around 2 Daisies and Opikopi?
Yeah.
Sure, would book him for that kind of show.
Yeah.
And so we did 2 shows a year. Great. Like, that's hard to dilute versus going, okay, we're going to take this show on the road for 200 days a year.
Yeah.
And so we're going to divide this investment cost by 200 just from a creative side.
Yeah.
Forget the
All the
day-to-day
time,
running costs.
planning, setting everything up just to do 2 shows. Yeah.
It's a huge investment because the same amount of energy needs to go into it, whether you're doing 200 shows. From a creative, building the show, what does it look like? What does it sound like? How does it feel?
Yes.
The visuals, to get those made up, to get the lighting programmed.
Because the audience only sees one.
Yeah.
And that one's got to be perfect,
Yeah.
whether it's 2 or 200.
100%. So it's the economics don't add up. But I don't feel like that needs to be a hindrance. I think we need to rethink and reframe. So there's different markets. I think that, again, taking this idea of the overseas market and trying to plug this square peg into a round hole is just going to lead to failure and frustration. And now that we're seeing music really being recognized globally for what it is, this African music, how do we as production and we as creatives find creative ways to plug into that and really support that?
Yeah.
Because I think there is an opportunity here. That's, we don't have infrastructure. We don't have like an ecosystem of like unions and fixed ways of working. But I think that also breeds the best creative work, because people have no rules and have no boundaries.
Yeah.
So they're just coming up, and it's so raw and edgy, and that's what's creating really, really cool stuff. If we could take that same level of thought and how do we plug that into without getting exploited, how do we take that and support the artists going overseas and in small ways, and not everything has to be, I think, set for the big stage. There's I personally think there's a trend coming of like the smaller shows.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the biggest shows in the world, they're great, but there's a conversation happening of like, I'm tired of watching a big screen at a show.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel that way, like having experienced a fair bit of both, but also having such an intimate venue at the cafe.
Yeah.
It's just different.
It's a completely different thing.
But isn't that also like a question for like the like money and like scale and
Economics,
to do
But this is always the balancing act.
Yes.
Someone has to pay, right? So
Yeah.
there has to be some sort of people willing to even pay to come watch a small experience. I'm talking real money here.
Yes.
That's a hard conversation to have. This
Yeah.
is not always guaranteed. So that is a real toss up. But I think in terms of growing audiences, testing out new ideas, places like yours is like a really cool. You look overseas, things like Bluebird Cafe and stuff. People go there and test music out.
Yeah.
How's this going to work with the crowd?
Mm.
Get
Yes.
feedback from them. We're a small community here of creatives. Like these artists don't like, when they're hanging out at the same place as we are, like they're
Yeah.
normal people. So
Yeah.
get them into a space to ask their peers, what does this song sound like? Have a listening session. Ask people for ideas, and someone's going to come up, I got a really cool idea visually what we could do with this
Yeah.
show. Well, that's awesome. How do
Yeah.
we translate that to the stage?
Yes.
And this is where we find like our feet really nicely in that space, because we're not always the lead creatives. We'll be like the guiding creative sometimes. So we love working with other people. So like anyone who wants to get on board, how do we plug them into the show? Because it's
Yeah.
not just a one-man thing. This isn't just me and Andrew sitting at the office. This is an army to put these shows
Yes.
together, an absolute army. And they don't all sit underneath the Bad Weather umbrella. There's literally hundreds of people to put
Yeah.
shows on,
Yes.
from all walks of life, doing all kinds of things. Like the show is not going to happen without every single one of those people.
For sure.
So the cleaners, the toilet people, the stage manager, you can be called the creative director at the festival. Like it doesn't matter. Who cares? If one person in that whole hierarchy is not doing their job, the show isn't going to work.
yes.
Yeah.
And the people are going to be pissed off about the experience.
For sure.
Like if the ticketing is a mess at the door, people walking in with like a preconceived idea that they're pissed off already.
Yeah.
Now you've got to like win them back. If the playlist that's playing in the changeover isn't like awesome.
Yeah.
Like it's all these things that
Yes.
all these touch points that matter to make a show. And I think once you have like buy-in from everyone, then you get like this great show. And like that's the quest, right? The perfect show. One day.
Yeah. Whatever that looks like.
It's not a thing. There will always be room for improvement. But that's like the goal, right? That's just to be the dream.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think there's an opportunity for small, intimate shows because that's what they're trying to do with big screen, right? How do we bring the audience closer?
Yeah.
I mean, why can't I watch it at home rather?
Yeah.
And
Instead
I
of
think
like waiting in a queue for like 6 hours.
Conversely, for the audience, like I don't think that we should wait for our favorite artists to like play these massive stages. It's also about the audience going to smaller venues and supporting. And like you'll also realize it's a completely different experience than like screaming with like 100,000 people, which is great on its own, but yeah.
And also, I mean, I think the reality for South Africans and South Africans interested in music is if you want to really enjoy South African music, you have to engage with the small venues and watching these kinds of artists because, like Gina said, like the big ones come around every once in a blue moon and they're great and for what they are, incredible. But for our scene to grow and really, and I think it goes to kind of talking about, you know, what can we learn from the international industry, which I think, you know, we can and do, and we're engaging with it. So we must bring all of those lessons back, but also what makes what we have uniquely South African that you can recognize it anywhere in the world. You're like, this is a South African creator because they think about things these way. And I think it goes to what you were talking about as well in terms of it does take a village of so many people from so many different perspectives, and that for me is part of what makes South African creativity so unique. And even at the small level, like you said, like having a listening party, and then you've got like some videographer who rocked up there because they didn't, and they're just like keen to try stuff, and they're like, I've got this really cool idea, and they come from a different perspective. And at a high level, it's hundreds of people who all come at it from that. But I think that's what makes us unique and unlike anyone else in the world, is we have this like massive confluence of influences, culturally, socially, whatever, economically, all of these things that give us that like unique South African thing. And I think that's what people will start to see. And I think what we need to get good at is just showing that to people, like in the world, you know, like showing what really, and I think showing people what really can happen when South Africans all come together around one idea and we produce the best shit in the world.
100%. It's all about perspectives and multiple of them because you're not talking to one type of person. So the message needs to be delivered and the story needs to be told to people with different perspectives. So if you're telling it from one perspective only the entire time, it's only ever going to land on the matched opposite.
Yes.
Whereas like, and I'm not saying the show should be all over the show, like or the story, but is it considered, how are we telling it to have multiple lenses on this show? And the more people building your creative team is like really one of the big things. Like, do you have people around you? Because giving your input creatively is daunting for people.
Yes.
And you need to be in a circle of people you trust and who will like respect your opinion and honor it. And it might not always be a good idea. That's absolutely fine. But you feel safe to give that opinion and be like, hey, I've got this idea. Everyone's like, cool, let's bag it. Maybe it's not perfect, but it will always creep around at some point. Maybe it sparks a further conversation around something else.
Absolutely.
But those safe spaces is what it's all about. That's where the creativity thrives. And I think we talked about getting people together. It's about creating those safe creative spaces that are encouraging to one another. They're not belittling of ideas. And that could be anyone with zero experience or tons of experience. So you need to be humble enough to be humbled. I've been doing this a long time, definitely not the longest. And I've had people with zero experience give me an incredible idea. I'm like, where did you get that? How do you?
Because sometimes the lack of experience is what gives the idea.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you have to be on board for the show. And then they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't matter. I will take you along.
I want you to not know what you're doing.
You need, bring a new idea, because sometimes you do get sucked into, I've done it like this before and I know it's the right way. And then you start playing things safe.
The status quo. Yeah.
And also like, it's not always good to play things safe.
Especially
you need
creatively.
someone with experience to go like, okay, there's money on the line here. We need to make things safe. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be pushing up until the last minute to really take things to the next level. And trying to push clients and artists and everyone else to like, are we challenging every decision creatively here?
Yes.
And sometimes you'll be told no and to back down, but then you can pocket that idea for the next one, and it will motivate you to be like, we're going to get it next time. We're going to push this thing over the line, because it's only a matter of time before the client realizes that maybe you want to push things 10 notches up, but for them, a 1 notch is massive. But you're going to knock away at those notches one at a time.
Yeah.
And in a few years' time, you keep building that relationship. Next thing you know, they're like, we need to do something next level.
Yeah.
All the great shows we've done have never happened on year 1. It's taken years of relationships of them feeling inspired by us trying to push things.
Yeah.
And sometimes we were young. We push things, even now, like we push things way in the wrong direction. But it maybe sets the client up like, to think about things in a new way. And like, how do we do something like this? Then they come back to us and like, I've seen this thing and I really think, how can we take it like this? That's an amazing thing.
Yes.
There's a relationship there being built. And these things don't take, they don't happen overnight. They take years of relationships and trust. And it's not about how much money can we make on you today so that we can be done with you tomorrow. It's about investing in their well-being and the creative of their show. Because these festivals, for example, I mean, I've been personally involved in Daisies for like 12 years.
Yeah.
From loading trucks to lighting stages to working for other companies to now, I guess, handling all the technical production for the whole festival. But that didn't come overnight. I didn't walk in, hi, I'd like to apply.
Yeah.
Or,
I want to run your technical.
Yeah, we're the best. You're going to call us. Like, that's not the case. It's like years and years and years of going, how do we improve on this? How do we work together as a team on this? And how do we keep you guys profitable so that we can keep the festival open without them? It's a really tight margin, the music space. So like, if you're not buying into their vision and buying into like, how do we support them financially instead of rinsing them? I think the biggest things we've contributed in those spaces, like, I don't think we should do this. I think this is going to bankrupt you.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the best solution for the company? That long term.
Next year we want to do this again.
Yeah.
You know, those are the hard conversations to have when you're trying to push the creative boundary, because you do want to take the money and you do want to produce great things.
Yes.
But you have to think of the longevity and the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that's honestly where it all goes down to, like that trusting relationship. You've got your creative team and your clients need to be included in that.
Yeah.
And that's where we're seeing these smaller companies like popping up, and the more attention to detail, people doing business out of real relationships. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And we need to expand that into the global scale.
Yeah.
You know, build a relationship with an artist, but trust the artist to take you with them when they go. And you acknowledge that you might not know everything, but just take me along for the ride. Like, I can contribute. I can add value.
I'm going to put my best foot forward. Like,
you're going to go 200% every day. If you keep doing that, like, there has to be trust.
Yeah.
But yeah, the more eyes on a project, the better it will be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that, that really is what being a South African creative, the value really is. I think one thing you touched on there that is really interesting, and I think isn't enough of the conversation, is around kind of the balance of the creative professional. You know, of
what balance?
Well, exactly. But you know, like, and whether within a creative professional team, there's the balance, or you know, the balance within oneself as a creative professional of starting to understand things like, it can't just be my idea, because I need to think about the organization I'm working with and how does it serve their long-term purpose and how do I invest in that. Growing a business like Bad Weather to what it has become now takes, obviously, the creative is a very important side, but I think without the professional side and the leadership side, you know, it's hard to grow a sustainable creative business. What is the most valuable things you've learned from scaling a creative business in South Africa to the scale that it is without the infrastructure that one would need? And like, what have been some of the hardest lessons or truths you've learned on that journey for other people interested in the space?
The biggest lesson is realizing early on that this industry is a team sport. Success is a team sport. I have a very simple rule at our business. If you use the word I won't work with you. It's very simple. If you post a picture of, I did this stage, this is my design, or my no, it isn't. You're not my people. I have no beef against you. You're just not in my circle. Because for me, it's a team sport.
Yeah.
When we post about projects, we don't say this person did the design. We have a very strict rule. Like everyone in my business touches every project, even if it passing through and you look on the screen at someone's desk. Hey, that looks really cool. Why are you doing like that? I got an idea for this. Everyone touches a project, even if they're not working on it. It's a team sport, and the success lies in every single person giving their input. And we just spoke about perspective. That's the success of running a business. It's not claiming success as your own, and it's claiming it collectively as a business, as an industry, as a support structure for clients, artists, whoever, and honoring the people that work in that space. I think it's a slippery slope, though. I think one of the challenges we've also faced is that there's sometimes people want to be credited for their work, and rightly so, but it is a difficult space because there's hundreds of people involved, and how do you credit everyone fairly? And the reality is we're working behind the scenes. So what credit are you looking for? I think that I've seen a lot of people struggle and leave the industry because they feel like they're not being credited. The credit's in the show, the credit's in the applause. That's what you're there for. Did you do a great job? Did the audience enjoy it? That should be enough for you. And I'm not saying we don't credit people. I think it's just, if you wanted to be on the stage, then you should have been a musician.
You're in your blacks at the back and that's the satisfaction.
Yeah, that's the satisfaction there. You have to be willing to not be thanked. But that's not what you're there for. I think so. Adjusting that early on, I think a lot of the youngsters coming into the space now I think that there's an idolization of like, we're going to produce these amazing shows and we're going to be credited, and people are also on the borderline of crediting for things that they're not involved for, or maybe not being transparent of their role in the project. Again, it's like, oh, I did this. Did you do that, or were you part of a team that did that? Were you lucky enough to be a part of an amazing creative team to deliver something like that? And I think it's about, that isn't about me saying, oh, I don't want someone to have an ego or get there that they're claiming. I think that you're doing disservice to the people around you, your team, who supported you when you've been cracking on the show for weeks with no sleep. And they were there left and right of you, supporting you in that moment. And you're now not honoring them by saying, I did this. And I think that's a slippery slope as well. And so, I think from a challenging perspective, I think leading creatives is really hard. They're like herding cats. I read the book, it is. It's there's so many. You want to have diverse opinions. You can have diverse personalities. So how do you deal with creatives? It's really, really hard. And then at the same time, you're dealing with technical people who are also very difficult because they are brilliant at what they do. But they're completely different people. And I said difficult. I don't mean difficult people. I'm saying you want to work with the best. They come with a set of requirements. You have to cater to them. How do you keep people engaged in a business? You want to come join me 9 to 5. A creative person is like, that is the worst thing
I already hate it. Work me up from there.
You need to flip the conversation because you're trying to formalize things, right? We want to have a business. We want to work normal hours. We want to be paid fairly. But these things don't always translate into the creative workflow, even the technical workflow. But we do want to be paid fairly. We do want to have work-life balance. Structure. But what does that structure look like? It doesn't necessarily need to be in corporate structure. So flexible hours, flexible locations, all these things are things that we're learning still. I mean, I was very adverse to like work from home before COVID because I was like, creative people need to be in the room together. That's where the best idea is. And I still stand by that. But I think there's a lot of merit for people going out there in the world, finding new things, finding new experiences, bringing that to the team. And we're seeing a huge productivity boost by having people work from home. We have people come into the office. We have fixed days so we can still
have culture.
Use the word culture. I was going to say, I'm not going to use the word culture.
Sorry.
But I think it's because it just feels very toxic.
I know what you mean.
Because I think that's like a corporate manipulation tactic.
Culture.
Come in for the culture. I think it's more coming into build relationships with your peers and share ideas that you can't do over a call. And finding ways to activate people's best working environment. Some people need other people to work and some people need to be alone. And again, it depends on the work you're busy with. So letting people say, hey, I want to work from home because I'm busy on this deep dive creative thing and I just need to be left alone. cool. I don't care
Mm.
as long as the work's great.
Mm.
You're having a good time.
Yeah.
So yeah, trying to balance that is a challenge that I'm still figuring out. We haven't waxed it yet, but ask my team. Maybe they can
Yes.
give us some better input of what they want
I think
and how we can support them in that. But being open and honest to
Yeah.
trying,
Yes.
having a dialogue. How do we help you? How do
Mm.
we support you?
Yeah.
You know, when one of our team members is like, I want to immigrate.
Mm.
Cool. How do we keep you on the team?
Yeah.
It's a hard
You're remote
conversation.
working. Great. Yeah.
You know?
I think, I mean, and it goes to kind of what we've been talking about, like how do we build our industry? What does that look like? What are these standards? What are these processes? And it is the reality and the kind of inherent conflict in working with creative professionals is like you want those people, because they're creative, to retain as much of their unique perspective and way of doing
Mhm.
things as possible, because that's how they're going to produce the best creative work. But at the same time, you've got to do that within an organization that has to operate as its own beast, and
Mhm.
everyone has a role to play in that organism, and finding the balance between like the individual versus the like nourishing the individual to produce the best work for the group.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I'm taking some lessons because very much something that we're, trying to learn and grow. And yeah, I think like the balance of flexibility to allow for those individual personalities with a structure that can also, how do you have a structure that isn't creatively discouraging? I tend to find sometimes structures are helpful because they provide parameters for like endless creativity, but balance.
Yeah, I think that maybe the shift we'd speak about, like the early growth of our creative industry here, and maybe it's the shift. I'm thinking about it now. Like, I think it's actually what will take us to the next level. One of the things I think will really help and help grow businesses like ours is the shift from being a great solo creative to be a great team creative. And that's a different skill, because people are relying, especially when you have deadlines. I'm relying on person A to deliver me something by this time so I can do my job. So
Yes.
there's kind of like the practical manager who's like, let's set these deadlines out, managing the client. But then we're relying on creatives and your team members to deliver things on time without feeling like they're boxed in a box. But there's that teamwork of like, I don't want to let the next person down. I want to let them have their time to do their best work.
Yeah.
And so by honoring that and working as a team, I think that the South African creative scene is really good at working on their own, because that's how everyone's coming up, right? It's like, I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
Because there's no support structure for them to be groups. And you see little collectives pop up, which are just like-minded people. And it's a great start for that. But just try build some level of structure into it to get paid fairly, have structure, these things like that. This is a hard thing to adjust to, because you are accountable to the people left and right of you. Whereas if you're working on your own, you're just accountable to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's just going to be a shift over time. It's going to take practice, like everything. We need companies to support that, and we need like brands to support that, and everyone else to like not come to us with an idea at the 11th hour and we need to execute right away.
Yeah.
So trying to promote better planning. Let's start the conversation early so we have enough runway to produce great ideas and throw ideas in the bin and retry. And, come to me a week before the show and tell me you want a great show. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that in and of itself, there's this expectation from non-creative professionals, of creative professionals, of like this ability to problem solve and come up with a great solution really quickly. And it's like going, yes, a lot of us are really good at those things. And yes, we can problem solve and troubleshoot and like make something happen really quickly because we're South Africans and we're born to mark a plan. Like, that's how we work.
Yeah.
But if you want it to be good, you've got to give us the respect and leeway and time and structures and all of those things to actually have the time to do our best work.
Yeah.
And then, because I think that problem is, constant throughout the creative industry, any creative professional. So often, I think, especially when you're starting out, it's like you get those last minute requests and you're starting out, so you just mark a plan to do it, and it is solo, and you can do it, you can turn it around on your own bat. But then it's like the quality is subpar. So then the next client also doesn't see you as worthy of that time. And I think that goes to that point you were making about like long-term relationships and building trust and over time getting people to trust you with more and more is like, you've got to have systems for yourself that are like self-respecting, especially as a young creative professional, like that allow you to have structures to do the best work so that you can continue to grow. And I think that goes to the the role of a team and an organization is you can be a great solo creative, but there's no way you're good at everything about running a good creative business.
No, not
there's
at all.
just absolutely no chance.
I would have bankrupted Bad Weather by now if it wasn't for Andrew.
100%.
Like you need the money side, the business acumen,
Yes.
and then you need someone to be. The analogy we use is like I'm the sail, he's the anchor. Like, but if there was no anchor, I would have sailed the ship off the flipping cliff already.
Yeah.
So having that balance of trusting each other, but yeah, exactly that. Like you're having, I think the bigger the ship grows, the harder it is to turn. So remaining agile is still something that creative teams really need. But we're not sitting around. When I say let's start a project early, it's not because I want to sit around and ponder the idea. We're working on 20 projects. So I can't just carve out everything at the last minute to make time for you. I want to, and we always make plans for the most part, but we have to also respect people's time and and create space for the last minute things, because we've learned that there will always be last minute things.
What can happen will happen.
And certain brands and agencies work only within this is your pitch window, and you've got 7 days to come up with an idea and pitch it. You need to be ready for those, because they don't give you warning. Hey, by the way, in 3 months' time, we're going to send you that brief. It's going to pop up in your inbox on a Saturday night. And you're going to be like, oh,
fantastic.
Here we go.
There goes my weekend.
And, you're loading in a show on Monday. You're like, how do we make this happen? Those are the challenges to really create capacity to do, creative capacity and personnel capacity.
Yeah.
Because if you tapped out on a show, and the one thing I'm struggling with and to still grow and learn from is how do you remain focused on the project you're working on currently? Like if you're on site delivering a show, how are you not torn away creatively or emotionally to the next project? Because in a business setting, you do need to run project to project.
Yeah.
When I was freelancing before the business was like, you throw everything into it and then you can just go home, lay on the couch for a while, and you get the next call and you dive fully into this next project. But with a business, you can't go weeks in between without work. You need to run project to project.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of figure out how to piggyback that and rotate that so that the team is working in conjunction with each other and you can roll seamlessly project into project without burning everyone to the ground.
Yeah.
Because that's like a real reality, right? Like we're seeing a lot of technicians, especially in this country, either leave the space. We lost so many great people for just leaving the space. Like, I'm going to get a 9 to 5, man. This sucks.
Yeah.
I gave one of the things that really shook me in COVID, if we can just circle back there, was our industry is all about giving everything of oneself into
20-hour days. And
no one complains. We love it. No one does this for the money. They get into it because they're crazy. And they stay in it because they're crazy.
Cheers to that.
That's the reality. This is an insane
100%.
job. What we do. This is nuts. No one from
doesn't
the
make
outside,
sense.
No, it
objectively.
doesn't. So you stick around because you're really passionate. So you give your entire heart and soul into it. And then when COVID happened, everyone realized that no one was looking out for them, and they had invested all their self-worth into what they were doing, not who they were. And when they realized that no one had their back, I think that was really, really hard for people to accept, that like their self-worth was linked to everyone just going like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care about what you do, what you did. It's just not for me. And then I think that really made people go like, I don't want to do this anymore. Or I'm not going to do this for this price anymore.
Yeah.
So then we had a huge exodus of great people leaving the country and going to work in the Middle East or work overseas in the US. And my fear, and what we're starting to see now, is that we were left with a huge skill shortage. So there was no skills transfer. There was this massive gap between guys who were nearing retirement and suddenly all these young bloods. And now you have to produce these big international festivals in South Africa with international standard. With what crew? And we're not putting our best foot forward when an international turns up and someone is like green behind a console or something.
Not a good training site.
No, it's not. And there's no middle ground, right? Because there's no venues.
There's no mid-size
So there's no mid-size venues. So like there's no stepping stones for people to grow and progress. And then we're seeing those people who have gone overseas for much better pay, which I think is we need to be accountable for. Why aren't we paying our people better? It's a hard conversation because there is business involved, but that's something to discuss separate to this. And we're seeing those people going to eventually start coming back. And we're already seeing people come back either for extended periods or maybe not over the busy season over there. And they come back and they don't have a client base anymore because the clients have moved on. And there's a disparity in what they're getting paid. Because like, sorry, dude, the price is now this. And it's a huge shift. How do you deal with that? You know, these are major problems. Then again, they go like, well, why must I transfer skills if this is how I get treated? I'm getting spat on when I come home. So instead of going like, wow, we should be honoring these guys and trying to figure out how can we get these people into upskilling, you know, and there's a few companies doing a lot of good work and trying to do that and offering training. And there's a lot of focus on that right now, which is really key. But from a personal level, these good people are, and I've chatted with a lot of them. I'm like, when are you coming home? Like, we miss you. I want you on shows. And they're like, we're not. Why would I? What future do I have there? I get to work on great international shows now and I get treated with respect. I get fed. I get a livable income. Why would I come home?
And they're probably held in really high regard because they're South Africans, ironically.
So suddenly this hard work ethic is paying off. But it's a question we need to ask ourselves. Like, how do we maintain talent here? This is a bigger, broader creative question as well, because production people, creatives, all that stuff, everyone is focused on the export. How do we export? How do we get out of here? Like, that's the ticket, right? Cape Town, Joburg, overseas. Like, what nonsense is that? Like, what are we doing? There's more than enough money here to do this. We're just doing it wrong. Something's wrong. I don't have the answer, but this is a conversation that like needs to be had.
100%.
Because we will lose all of our creativity and all of our creative people if we cannot afford to foster them.
I mean, I often think about the film industry in South Africa because it's such a good example of where like we don't realize, or a lot of people in the country don't realize, like everyone brings their films to South Africa to make because the crews are world class. The creative, the talent, the skills are world class. But like you said, so often that's now, or especially in the past, it's been just exporting to overseas. And sometimes we don't even see the movies that are being made here. I feel now like with this kind of increased cultural focus on South Africa and streaming platforms, I think have been huge in terms of like raising maybe just the like awareness of film infrastructure in the country and starting to focus internally. But I think going to your point about the infrastructure and the skills and having a space where people can, you know, develop and learn, I think that goes into, you know, what are the mechanisms from your experience that we need to start prioritizing, I think, aside from the creative? Because for me, in a lot of ways, the actual creative itself, cool. We've done so well internationally across the board, like music. And I mean, there's so many people right now that are South African musicians at the top of the world. I'm a piano aside almost. Black Coffee, you've got Tyler, you've got Trevor Noah, you've got so many South Africans at the top of the world, despite not having the infrastructure and the industry and the opportunities relative to other markets. So the creative's good. The creative's good. What are the most important things we need to prioritize? I think education and like skills transfer and a real pipeline for that's important, and we've touched on that. But
hugely important. Talk about education. Being open to have an honest conversation with your competition, or who would you consider competition? That's fine, but have an honest conversation. Don't price war each other. Let's creative war each other. And don't let the client manipulate you into, I'm gonna get 20 briefs out there. Everyone will do everything for free, and I'll pick the best one because I've seen that nonsense go very far, very quickly. Charge for the work. We're not touching it until you pay. But when the client's willing to put their money where their mouth is, fight creatively. So to your point around how do we educate and how do we build and how do we provide these things, it's about providing open conversations to these things don't work for free.
Yeah.
But also work for free. So when you're young, work for free. Get in. Don't come with this long list. I've seen so many mails in my inbox. And that's always right before shows. The week before show. I've always wanted to work at festivals, and I see you doing whatever, Rocking the Daisies, Confest, who cares what it is. And I want to come work. Why now? Why on this festival? Why not come do the scrappy job that I'm doing next week?
Yeah.
Why this one? No, because you want to post on Instagram.
Yeah, that I work.
Because you want to do clout.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for me. Come work at the small one. If you can pull it off there, you can pull it off anywhere. Like, be willing to work. Not always for free, but work. We've found the best people in our team have been through we do student initiative programs at Daisies. We've hired and we continue to hire the best freelancers by picking students up who are super passionate. And one of the best success stories I have about like a project like that is this year at Daisies, our team from like 3 years ago who were students, who are now full-time filmmakers, who run the video department for us at Daisies, were leading the student team of their peers from
cycles.
And that is so cool. And not because, I want to give everyone a shot, because out of everyone I could choose to hire for paid position, I hired the students from 3 years ago because they're still fantastic. But there's so many people that have passed through that I don't hire.
Yeah.
Because they're not fantastic, because they were there for the ride. And I guess it goes down to this idea of you have to be crazy to work in the industry, right? Support the people who are, give them opportunities. Don't be a diva about it, guys. Like, just get stuck in, but know your worth at the same time. It's a balancing act. And so the conversations are where it's at. Let someone have a mentor. Go to someone and say, can you mentor me? Be honest, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I still do that. Like, I don't know what I'm doing all the time. You need someone to bounce ideas off. You need someone to be like, hey, I think that we should do this. We shouldn't do this. This is how we can improve. This is how we can be better. And I think that if we can have honest conversations around like pricing, honest conversations around like work-life balance, if you will, like, or like structure, or like how do we create structure within the space? Like, what is a working day? The joke in is like a working day is 24 hours. It's not. Like how is that 24 hours? Like, but what is a working day in our space? The film industry have it right. There's overtime, there's things like that. But that comes with a caveat too. Everyone wants to rock up with like subpar skills and charge me a 10-hour day. I'm happy to pay it if you can deliver your job in that time frame. But don't come and be like, oh yeah, and communicate up front. The amount of times I've gotten like mails afterwards, oh yeah, but actually this, but actually that. Like,
that's not the agreement.
That's not the agreement, right? So I want to be supportive in the creative space, but then you pin me down as a businessman afterwards, and I have to make those hard calls, and you're going to learn a hard lesson.
Yeah.
Just like I had to learn many hard lessons. I don't want to be in that space. So let's communicate. Let's have those honest conversations. Don't be afraid to talk about money and rates. Don't be. And we should be, all of us be talking more about like, what are people charging for this service? What is a fair market value?
Yeah.
So that people aren't getting screwed.
Yeah.
And I think that exposure to people higher up, and you have to earn your keep. So like I can't have someone like, I want to shadow you, or shadow a festival director or a promoter. Like, that has to be earned to some extent. But we also need to, how do we take these skills and make sure we are fostering the next generation? And I think it's our responsibility to find those people and bring them into the fold, protect them at all costs, this kind of thing. But maybe there's this opportunity to create space for these people.
Yes. Well, you've spoken a lot about your team, and it takes a village, and also the exodus of people in this industry leaving with COVID and whatnot. And we've also spoken about the unique thing in South Africa being a diverse range of perspectives. And I think that's important that it reflects in the team as well. And so with the opportunity of like building a new sort of like generation of like teams in this industry, what do you feel, and obviously there's a skill shortage and there's so much that goes into it, but how do you feel at bad weather you're ensuring that there is, whether it's race or gender, a great representation of people and ideas in this like new generation coming up?
that's a difficult question as a white male in South
Yes.
Africa to
Well,
comment
I think
on.
like
So I definitely can't comment on that from everyone's
Mm.
perspective. I can only comment from my own.
Yes.
I think that the first thing is to put your hand up and say, I don't know everything.
Yes. For sure.
And I'm not a true representation of everyone. It's to, even being the white male is acknowledging that that's who you are.
Yeah.
Don't have to have shame in that or shy away from that.
Everyone
Own
can
it.
see it.
Yes.
Own it and say, you know what? I need people around me with better perspective. I need the perspectives I don't carry. And it's not because I don't want to. I just don't have exposure to that. So it's like anything. You need
You
to
can't.
expose yourself
Yeah.
to more things. You want to learn more music? Listen to more music. You want to be around people and be a better human being and have more perspective? Surround yourself with people who have different perspectives, different walks of life than you. Even if it challenges you, it's not going to make you a worse person by doing it.
Yeah.
So surround yourself and be open to be challenged. It's very easy to be like the creative director and everyone's like, yes, great idea. That I hate that. Like the rule in our business is like challenge me. And if you challenge me well enough, I will back down. Because if I'm willing to back down, I'm not 100% sure on my idea. And if you're willing to challenge me, it means you truly believe in your idea and I will honor that. So we want that healthy debate, but you also need to be able to articulate, to stand behind your perspectives and your ideas. And I think that's where the healthy trusting teams really comes into play, because you're not having a personal debate with one another. It's not a personal attack. This is a very much a creative space where you're going like, give me a different perspective and let me listen with an open mind and to that. And then how do we make this better for everyone? So when we get, I don't know how many years ago, it's been a good couple of years, like we were a tiny team. Let's give context here. We're a tiny team. First time we hired a female, first thing we did was sit down with her and we was like, we've never hired a female before. What do we do?
Yeah.
How do we make you feel comfortable here? We
For
have
sure.
first thing, vulnerability. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yes.
I'm not a girl.
I'm not a girl.
Yeah.
And I've only
Just
worked in an industry full of guys.
Yeah.
open conversation about it rather than
100%.
pretending we know the paths we haven't traveled.
100%. I have
Yeah.
no clue what it's like to be a female in the workspace, and especially in a very male-dominated industry. And you can't go around like, oh, we're going to treat the girls differently. Like, that's also not going to fly. Like, that's worse.
Yeah.
So just being like, asking the question, how does this make you feel? Is this supporting you? Is this making you feel uncomfortable? And being okay with being told, man, that situation made me feel super uncomfortable. And taking the time to be like, you know what? Thank you for giving me that feedback.
Yeah.
This will never happen again.
Yeah.
Like everyone in the team will honor.
Yeah.
And that goes for race, gender, sexual preference, whatever. Like it doesn't matter where you come from. Those conversations need to be had. So it's on us as leaders to present ourselves as vulnerable and open. Like, oh, I have an open door policy. Like that's
But mean it.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Show up.
Yeah.
Ask the
Yes.
questions. Maybe ask the question first. You're the leader. You should ask the question first.
Yeah.
Sit them down. Say, how can I make this better for you?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's really comforting throughout the whole conversation, sort of gauging the way that you do things and your perspective, because I feel like there's a lot of people we could have had in this chair and in the industry that really have their backs up about things that they don't know.
There's a huge divide in our industry. Like, I don't want to say racially, but I think it's more culturally. Let's be honest here, a lot of business owners are white males. And they want to do one thing, and you've got this new generation of people we're not going to do it. And so it creates this like you say, people have their backs up, right?
But I think that goes to the ego and feeling attacked versus being able to take on feedback.
100%. And we're a very culturally cool company in a sense that we work on the coolest shows.
100%.
At least I believe that.
Yeah. You're right.
But have you seen the coolest shows in South Africa? They're not white people.
They're not for old white men.
Old white men. So I'm the first guy in the meeting to be like, hey, I have a question about this. We were talking about this earlier, we're doing Red Bull Symphonic and the whole show's in Zulu. What do I know about Zulu? But I can guarantee you one thing. I truly care about what the show is trying to say and how can I best understand that. So I'm the first one to go to the client and to the artist and be like, can you just explain this to me? Or I'm sorry I'm pronouncing this incorrectly. Please help me get better. because I want to learn. I want to know what the song is about. What is truly the message? Because the language of music is universal. So I can feel that in the music. But what is it translating to?
What's the nuance?
What's the nuance here?
Yeah.
What is your story within that? But that's a super vulnerable position. You've been paid. You're in the room now. And everyone in the room is going to say, oh, yeah, you're going to all start flexing and justify why you're in the room. I think the reverse needs to happen. Be like, why am I in the room? What is my role here? How do I better this production? How do I offer vulnerability? How do I ask the right questions? Don't try, for lack of a better term, bullshit your way through. Like, this is a big problem right now in SA, is that everyone, look, fake it till you make it. There's a level there, right? But I think that should be more leaned towards jumping the deep end and learn to swim rather than faking it, as in lying and bullshitting your way through an important conversation. Be open, be vulnerable, just like artists have been with me. The first time I ever met Mike, it was a random phone call, and he's like, I want to do this thing, come. I never met the guy. I sat in the chair, and he just rapped the whole show for me in front. And I sat in silence for like an hour. And he's like, the spotlight here. And I was just like, I sat in silence, like I hadn't met the guy at all. And I was just like, okay, like an hour went by. He like did the whole show, like in the living room. And I was like,
you could picture the
that's
whole
great.
thing.
yeah, he had the whole thing in his head. So all I could think of was like, how do I get this out of this guy's head and into the lighting desk and into the show? But that's the thing. There's offering vulnerability. He doesn't know me, but there's just is a driving passion behind that vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's not using it to exploit anyone. It's not to emotionally manipulate anyone. It's not to say, oh, I don't deserve to be in the room. I absolutely deserve to be in the room because I'm willing to work the hardest. That should be the why you're in the room. Not because you're the best. Who says you're the best? That's completely
what
objective,
metric? It's
subjective,
creative.
whatever.
Yeah.
Who cares? But it should be who wants to be in the room the most.
I've got the best intent.
100%. That should win every time.
Yeah.
And those people should be in the room. And the people who don't want to be there, you can find the door.
Yeah.
And I think they'll naturally weed themselves out. And we talk about creating opportunities. Those people will naturally find themselves standing at the door and, let them in.
I mean, I think your points around, I think this like self-confidence side of, like, there's this thing of self-confidence versus the willingness to learn and not be the best at everything. And I think as creatives, I think there's been this narrative made of like, you need to be the best creator at everything in the room. And that's not the case. And I think it's like this thing of, like you were saying earlier, with people upskilling and knowing your worth and all of these things. It's like, yes, I'm really good at this thing. And I know my worth in this thing. This is what I do. I'm really, really good. However, I'm here because I'm not perfect at everything. And I need these other people to help make me being great at what I do have the biggest impact. So I've got self-respect for myself in that I know that I'm really good at that. And I'm not going to take shit. And I think that's part of the thing, is like, we need to have systems and processes in the industry that support, people being paid fairly. Like you said, talking about the money side of things like work-life balance, all of that. You shouldn't be being overworked, beyond a certain point. But at the same time, like you said, and being a creative, you're never finished. You've never you don't get a qualification. I mean, some people do, but there's no like end game qualification. Oh, I am, I'm good. I'm sorted. You're always learning. And I think and it goes to the like fake it till you make it perspective, or like working for free when you're young and you proving yourself. And I think there's an element, I mean, I did it for years, like I did live sound and stuff for years before I could start to charge for it, because I had the confidence. I had that undeniable stack of proof that I knew I was good at that. But then also the whole time, like, just reaching out to other people who were levels ahead and going, like, this is what I'm good at. I know this. And I really back myself here. But, like, there's so much more, and I'd love to learn from you. Like, what's your perspective on this? Even if I've got a preconceived take on or experience. And like you said, like, you can fall into that trap of doing something right, and you're doing it right, and you keep doing it right. But if you're not thinking about it and evolving and creating new solutions, it will become no longer the best thing.
I mean, the saying could not be more true is you're only as good as your last show. If you don't believe that and you're not constantly afraid of that, a healthy fear, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just get out of the industry. Like, that's as simple as that. If you don't really truly care about what you're doing, just don't do it. And take every show, every event like it's this is it. This is the audition of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And you should have that approach to it. Like, you're only as good as your last show. Like, everyone's like, oh, because like you say, what qualifies the best? Like, did you give everything into that show? No matter the size, the payout, whatever it is. And that's how you get the next one. It's only, I mean, we talk about long-standing relationship with clients. Yeah, I've got a long-standing relationship with clients. But if I screw the show up, they should fire me. They should. It shouldn't be the nepotism of like, oh yeah, no,
I've worked with you for 10 years. Yeah.
Did I completely screw this up? I should be fired. Like, you should have that fear. And I think some people be like, no, we're the best. Doesn't matter. I will still get hired.
Yeah.
Like, how insane.
Yeah.
How could you gamble with someone's money and vision and stuff like that? You should be taking this stuff very seriously. It's not heart surgery. We are not putting a man on the moon here.
Yeah.
We are having fun. It's entertainment.
But people's jobs are on the line.
Yeah. This is,
People's
you want to be
lives.
taken seriously as a career. You need to start behaving seriously. The days of sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing are over. This is a serious career now. Again, still having fun. Yeah. We still, cutting
work-life
loose.
balance. Yeah.
From
A little
time
bit
to
every now
time,
and again at the end of the day.
But this is a serious career. So you want to be taken seriously, then take yourself seriously too. And present yourself in a way that people can take you seriously. You don't have to change the way you dress. I'll turn up to a corporate meeting. This is how I am. It's cool. I don't change who I am. But you need to be taken seriously. You need to have credibility. And by doing great shows upon working your hardest, and things do go wrong, it's fine. But keep giving it 110%, 200%. Every single show. Trust me, it is so easy to rise to the top in SA. Because it's just so much opportunity. And we're seeing a lot of good people. Not enough. Good people rise to the top really quickly.
Yeah.
It's the one beautiful thing about South Africa. I don't believe our business could exist in the way it does overseas, because we would have never been able to grow so quickly and so well in the space, because we are a small market. So you can work really hard and rise to the top. Overseas, you're working against much bigger machines that will just crush you. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just much harder.
Yeah.
We've
The
got a
pool's
massive
bigger.
opportunity here.
Yeah.
Like, if you can see that as an opportunity and not like, oh, we're in the small fish in the small pond. But you could be a shark in the pond here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you could be a freaking shark.
And the pond's getting bigger fast.
Yeah.
So become the shark quickly.
100%, man. Like, there's so much opportunity. It's all about perspective.
Cheers to that. Oh. Okay. On that note, before we wrap things up, on those cool opportunities and the cool things that are happening, we like to end the show off with giving you an opportunity to just talk about some brands, people, individuals, events, whatever that you think are just doing really, really cool shit in the South African scene at the moment. It's really, really open-ended. Give us your thoughts.
Sure. I think, again, difficult question. Like, where do you start? I think
Pre-caveat, if he didn't mention you, it's not personal.
No. I think anyone doing anything right now needs to be shouted out, to be quite frank. It's really hard for people to do this. So if you are doing creative work and trying to make it happen, shout out to you. Like, if you're giving it your best, shout out to you. Honestly, in any form, just awesome. I think the Cape Town music scene and the South African music scene as a whole is really cool at the moment. I think that we are seeing some really great music and different genres coming out. I would like to shout out like small venues like you guys who are providing spaces, because it's the small venue that leads to the mid-sized venue that we can hopefully get a big venue again. We need to rebuild those spaces, and you guys are doing it the right way around. Everyone, I don't think reopening a big venue is the play. Not now. We need to build audience. We need to build music. We need to stop just doing DJ culture. It's great, but there's enough of that. There's enough spaces. We need to do live music culture and artist culture. So what you guys are doing is awesome, I think, in that space, and it has to be commended. And
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of space in Joburg doing the same thing.
Mm.
There's a lot of cool little boutique spaces that are popping up, great people that are investing their time and their energy into it. I know that who else want to shout out? I don't even know.
Some people just thank their
trying to
mom.
Oh yeah, the Bro Clubhouse doing cool stuff. Who else? There's a lot of cool fashion stuff as well that's coming up, and there's the blend. I think the guys are like figuring out how to blend the whole thing together, being good at what you're at, but then realizing that it's way more than one pillar.
It's connected.
Like let's figure all that out. I think that's really interesting. And yeah, just from a shout out perspective, not to say that not that they're not doing anything cool. I just want to say shout out to like all the people that gave us opportunities coming up. People that mentored us. Me personally. So yeah.
And I mean, I think that's really important, like those people, and like to encourage people, like invest in South Africa, like in local creatives where you can, wherever you can. It gives you the opportunity to make a huge impact on the world scale. And I think there's various ways you can do that, but like that's really important. And so I think I agree. Thanks to the clients for the ones that do support and do help and do encourage and provide space to grow. That's actually a really nice shout out that we haven't had before. But
I want to challenge like anyone who's like in a decent space of power, find someone to mentor, please. And anyone who's looking to come up, please find a mentor. Like build a relationship, an honest one. Grow together, support each other. That person will then provide mentorship to the next. It doesn't have to be transactional. It's just be a mentor, be open to share information, build a relationship with someone. And
mentorship's a two-way street. The most common thing I hear from mentors is how much they learn from a mentee.
I was about to say, I learned so much from working with my team and with everyone I get to be surrounded by. And I've just as much I've learned from the people who have come before me. So yeah, that's a big challenge, but please let's do it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Cheers to that. Thank you so much for your time and insight and wisdom, and broader than this conversation, what you're doing for the scene in South Africa, and taking that name all over the world. It's invaluable. We're so grateful. Thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do. And yeah,
thank you guys.
If you are watching, listening, make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things, comment any questions you've got, and yeah, subscribe for the next episode. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye-bye.